To help us make sense of everything that you've heard so far, I'm now being joined in the studio by the journalist, political affairs commentator, and Arise News analyst, our own Dr. Constance Ikokwu. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's go to the decision by President Bola Tinubu to actually reverse the sanctions against Niger Republic and, of course, Guinea and Mali, Burkina Faso, but of course the emphasis was on Niger. You would have heard what my guest said. What do you make of all that he's had to say?
Well, the lifting of the sanctions was a culmination of about 8 to 9 months of diplomatic tussle on account of the coup that occurred in that country. And one way to look at it or to interpret it, the latest decision, is that ECOWAS has fallen flat on its face in spite of all the grandstanding that took place. I think the attempts at whipping Niger into line didn't work. It actually became counterproductive because then it led to other countries, Mali and Burkina Faso, joining with Niger to leave the ECOWAS bloc. And so it really showed that ECOWAS did not have what it took or what it takes to pack a punch. And so it's time to begin to reflect about that regional body. But at this juncture also, I think that it's important to raise a couple of questions, which is, going forward now, is it possible for the body, for ECOWAS, to become what it used to be in the past? The answer to that is that yes, it's possible, but it will require a lot of work and sincerity within the bloc to have honest conversations about what happened and how to move forward. Then secondly, is it possible for these 3 countries to return to the bloc? It is also. However, we also have to drop the intimidation tactics, because it never worked, it will never work. We honestly have to say, we are brothers and sisters, what can we do to go from here? And then thirdly, what about Nigeria? How do we regain some trust, regain our faith, and some respect? Because all of this has transpired under the leadership of Nigeria, and it's very disappointing for a lot of people. So Nigeria has to come down from its high horse, humble itself, and say, you know what, we are the big brother. What are the problems? Let's have a good conversation. Let's foster peace and stability and cooperation within the bloc, and then let's move from here.
Well, some would have said it's a face-saving measure, actually, by ECOWAS. And then there are still talks here and there that ECOWAS actually placed some demands on the Nigerian authorities, for example, saying that, look, they will still want President Bazoum, who was sacked, to actually be released alongside his family. Do you think that these military leaders would actually release the former president, considering that ECOWAS is negotiating from a weak perspective at this point in time?
It's difficult to say, but now that the sanctions have been lifted, diplomatic talks can resume, and then you can begin to, speak on an equal basis and say, this is fair to do. You make some demands in a manner that does not hit the hammer on them. And I think part of the broader issue is that people really think, or suspect that one of the reasons why these African countries are taking the steps, such as what happened, is that they owe their allegiances to foreign countries. And part of these sentiments is because of the experiences of colonialism, neo-colonialism, and exploitation that continues to happen currently in Africa. There are also issues of economic dependency on foreign powers and unequal trade relations between African countries and foreign powers. And so people say, our leaders, our so-called leaders, who do you really owe your allegiance to?
Yeah.
We've seen what happened with France. Most of these countries are Francophone countries. They are fighting for their independence, and France is afraid that it's losing. It's being slapped in the face left, right, and center. It started with Guinea. So there was Guinea, there was Burkina Faso and Mali, and then when it came to Niger, where they get substantial supply of uranium, they had to, run to ECOWAS of Nigeria to say, help us. So people are very suspicious of all of this. And then you see, watch what happened after the military junta came into power. The price of uranium that France used to pay had to be moved upwards to what they consider
to reflect the real price.
Exactly, a fair price,
Okay.
a fair market price. So these are all issues that ECOWAS leaders should take into consideration when discussions are ongoing.
All right, just before I let you go, was it a failure of tact and strategy by the chairman of ECOWAS, who happened to be Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu?
Of course, hasty decisions, very hasty decisions. You have to think things through, and then you have to understand geopolitics, because it's very crucial. You're not alone in this world. Africa is always related to exploitation when it comes to foreign powers. They are everywhere. Your guest talked about the role of France. France is everywhere in Africa. It doesn't want the survival of ECOWAS. It doesn't want the survival of any regional body on this continent. They play a huge role behind, in all these countries. So you have to understand this and how this affects your country and the African continent. First of all, your allegiance should be to Africa and to African citizens, because that is who you are elected to represent. When you go to Europe, the same thing happens. Their allegiance and loyalty is to their people.
All right, just very lastly before I let you go, the cooling issue, I mean, it's been terribly hot everywhere, issue of climate change, we all face it every day. This government agency is actually saying that, look, there are better ways we can actually manage this, especially from our houses, the kind of gases we use, the kind of energy bulbs and all of that we use. What do you make of the submission by my last guest?
Samna, it's excellent that we are talking about this issue. And, I think Nigerians and African countries are always jumping on the next bandwagon of innovations, whether it's electric vehicle and all of that. But it's a business. They're just selling you things and you're buying. The fundamental and permanent solution to this crisis, whether it's climate change or hot weather, is architecture. Your architecture has to be Afrocentric, and it has to be culturally and environmentally friendly. You cannot be building homes that you import their designs from Europe. No, your weather is totally different. So that means that your architectural designs should take that into consideration. You want to have buildings where you can even live without having air conditioners. That's what you should be doing, not talking about cooling systems. No, design in such a way that you can live in a house. And materials also, you import all sorts of materials that are not good for your environment. These are the direction or the things that we should be looking at.
All right, I'm afraid that's the much time that we have for this.
We always have very short time.
Yeah, I mean, because you always have enough time actually to explain out issues. And we really appreciate you. We must thank you so much for helping us to understand these issues.
You're welcome.
Our own Dr. Constance Ikokwu. Well, that's how it's been for this edition of Arise Primetime. Do join us again from next week. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thank you for watching. I'm Somna Sambo.